Welcome back, guys, to the Great Ace Attorney Adventures, where we continue with our post-game escapades, now having reached episode 5 at Naruhodo's legal consultancy. An escapade in Naruhodo's legal consultancy where Suzuto appears to be rather irritated because it seems Ryunosuke has been buying a little too much bric-a-brac. Now the whole place is brimming with things they don't need, and his latest purchase has really rocked the boat with Iris and Suzuto. Let's find out what happens. It looks normal to me. More like it's Shelms's bric-a-brac. Hello, I'm back. Oh, hello, Mrs. Naruhodo. Did you have a good outing? Hi, Bruno. Huh? What's the matter? Your eyes are as big as dinner plates. Iris, I wasn't expecting to see you here. I've just made some tea, Mr. Naruhodo. Would you like a cup? A cup or two, yes. Definite tea. Haha. All right, Bruno. What's going on? You're acting extremely strangely. What? Me? No, not at all. I'm as normal can be. Normality itself. See? Ha ha. Not again, Mr. Naruhodo. Sorry, not what again? What do you mean, Susie? Whenever he goes out on his own lately, he always seems to come back with a peculiar new purchase. Peculiar? Peculiar? What's peculiar about the things I've bought? You seem to think that anything British is a curio you simply must have. You keep buying items of bric-a-brac even though you don't know what they are. Well, there are rather a lot of bric-a-brac shops and pawnbrokeries and like around here. It's when I've been in Lord Strongheart's to give my weekly report. I'm always so nervous beforehand. On the way home, I just find myself in those shops and... Yes, alright, I can't deny it. I've bought something. You're right, you can't deny it because your eyes are wider than ever. You really ought to put up a warning sign about them. They're bigger than some potholes around here. It's hard to resist things in the bric-a-brac shop. It's also cheap. Mr. Shelms has given me lots of useful advice about how to pick out the real bargains. You must remember, Bruno, that Hurley likes to have fun with you. Take his advice with a big pinch of salt. Well, that's true. That thing you told me was a pot stand wasn't a pot stand at all. But I never have guessed it was a collapsible top hat. No, and I'd never have guessed that you could fill up this once empty room so quickly. Honestly, it's overflowing with things we don't need now. I mean, look at those scales. Not once have you weighed something on them. I know, but ever since I first stood at the defense's bench in court, I don't know why, but I've just really wanted my own little set of scales. Let's see it then, Mr. Naruhodo. What have you come home with today? Oh, well, it's, one of these. What is it? It looks all dry and shriveled up in a ball. Really, Mr. Naruhodo? What is it? It's a sea anemone. An anemone? Yes, I mean, I know it doesn't look like it at the moment. It's all shriveled up, like you said. Aren't sea anemones living creatures? The ones that dance about on the seabed? Yes, exactly, the ones that dance about on the seabed. Oh, they sell sea anemones in bric-a-brac shops here in Britain. I don't know whether they normally do or not, but I do know that I bought one today. But why, Bruno? Well, yes, for the aquarium, of course. Aquarium. I don't know that word. Well, according to the shopkeeper, keeping sea creatures in tanks was hugely popular here in London before. Oh yes, some people have some beautiful fish in seawater tanks, it's true. Having an aquarium became popular because the old glass tax was abolished. There it is again, rearing its ugly head, the subject of taxation. It was a real craze for a while. Everyone in London had one. For a while. Yes, it didn't last long. People's enthusiasm soon waned. It's just far too much work to be changing the seawater regularly in a city like London. Never a truer word said, I'm sure. You think people might have realized that from the start, really, wouldn't you? Anyway, that was long before I was born. So now everyone jokes that there's an unloved aquarium covered in dust in every attic in the capital. And it's true. There's one in this attic, too. When I told the man in the bric-a-brac shop about it, he had these words of wisdom. That's why this is the age of the sea anemone. And that made a lot of sense to me. It made sense to you, did it? But Runo, this anemone is completely dried up. You just need to soak it in water overnight and it'll be good as new. That's what the man said. I'm not sure that it works in the same way as dried wakame seaweed, Mr. Naruhodo. Once I've saved some money, I'm going to buy some prawns to keep this little fellow company. Oh, how exciting! Your office will be teeming with life. Will it really? Britain is a funny country, though. I mean, a sea anemone craze. Well, they say people in glass houses about comments like that here, Mr. Naruhodo. Don't forget that there was a very curious rabbit craze in our own country not so very long ago. A mortifying chapter that people will try to erase in the history books 100 years from now, I'm sure. You know, there was another craze as well before the aquarium one. Have you heard of Wardian cases? Wardy what? No, I've definitely never heard of them. They were little glazed cases for growing plants indoors, I believe. Oh, I see. For plant lovers to raise their favorite tropical plants. That's right, like different types of ferns. Ferns? Do you mean those rather dull plants with lots of fronds for leaves? They're not dull at all. Ferns are lovely plants. I think people wanted to recreate the exotic foliage of the tropics in their own homes. So they grew ferns. I mean, ferns, sea anemones. London certainly have a knack for the obscure. Well, thinking about it, my grandfather loved the moss in his bonsai. He looked after it better than the trees. It seems like the more obscure something is, the more it interests people. Maybe. Anyway, the Wardian case craze didn't last very long. Now, most of those little glass cases are just gathering dust, I think. But haven't I seen one in your room, Iris? Oh, very observant of you, Susie. Yes, that's right. Mine's certainly not gathering dust. I grow tropical herbs in it. Well, Mr. Naruhodo? I really must ask you to stop all this frivolous buying of strange things. Yes, all right. Sorry. It's just that, well, think about Mr. Sholmes' room. He has all sorts of peculiar trinkets lying around. Oh, well, yes, that's true. And they seem to be growing in number. Recently, I've noted a blowpipe, a few beryl crystals set in a twisted piece of gold, a gold-rimmed pince-nez. I spotted a small gramophone record in there the other day, so I slipped it onto the gramophone. But it was just whispering voice saying Norbury and nothing more. What could it possibly be about? Those are all mementos of cases that Hurley solved over the years. Exactly, that's what I want to create in here. Just that sort of atmosphere. Ah, a room full of meaningful trinkets, each with their own unique history, you mean? Yes, that. I knew you'd understand, Miss Osato. But, Mr. Naruhodo, none of the things you brought for the room have any connection with any of our cases. Oh, don't they? Well, for example, take that splendid but rather weather-beaten top hat. That wasn't used as evidence in any of the cases we've worked on, was it? Oh, so you have two top hats if you count the collapsible one as well. No, the collapsible one is a pot stand, as far as I'm concerned anyway. The other day, when we were in court, they were everywhere, weren't they? Top hats, I mean. Well, here in Britain, of course, they're the mark of a true gentleman, so that's hardly surprising. If a man isn't wearing a top hat when he ventures out of doors, he'll be looked down upon. Gosh, it has very strict rules, doesn't it? The English Gentleman's Code. I've been wondering how I'd look in a top hat recently. After all, my university uniform is black as well, so I think it would be very in keeping. Oh, what a good idea! Go on then, Runo, try it on. The lesson here, I suppose, is that the juxtaposition of student and gentleman is just so strange and wrong. Well, I'd rather it didn't suit me anyway. I mean, these hats are ridiculous. I'd be willing to bet every foreigner who sees one of these for the first time thinks exactly the same thing. Why is that man wearing a chimney on his head? People in glass houses, remember, Bruno? What do you mean? Well, what about Japanese chonmage top knots? Those haircuts are the height of ridiculousness. True. At least you can take a hat off. Once you have a chonmage, it's on your head for good. I'd be willing to bet every foreigner who sees a chonmage for the first time thinks exactly the same thing. Why is that man wearing a cannon on his head? I suppose that's what it means to have different cultures, isn't it? As long as it's the Armstrong Jetto cannon. On the subject of hats, the one Mr. Sholmes always wears is really very strange, don't you think? I beg your pardon, Mr. Naruhodo. What a thing to say! That hat is the very essence of Mr. Sholmes. Yes, without his deerstalker, the great detective would be unrecognizable. It's called a deerstalker. That's a surprisingly swanky name. It's the hat of a hunter, just like the flat cap. I made up my mind long ago to visit Regent Street and buy one for myself. I'm not sure it's going to fit over your hair. Well, I think it's perfect for a great detective who stalks his criminal quarry. What do you think is strange about it anyway? Well, you've seen it. It has two brims, one at the front and one at the back. Why do you need two brims on a hat? Surely one at the front is enough, no? One moment, please. If you ask me, it's just Mr. Sholmes' madcap personality coming through. I bet it's so that he doesn't have to think about which way round to put it on or something like that. Mr. Sholmes does not have a madcap personality. He always has a clear head. Deerstalkers were made for hunters who had to hide in thickets when they were stalking their prey. The brim at the back was designed to stop the stalks of plants scratching the backs of their necks. Oh, so that's the reason. Thank you, Iris, for educating us. Mr. Sholmes doesn't spend a lot of time in thickets, though, does he? Well, no, that's true. I'm telling you, it's just his impetuous personality. That's my theory, and I'm sticking to it. Firmly. Ah! Here you all are. Oh, good afternoon, Mr. Sholmes. I've not long since made some tea, Mr. Sholmes. Would you like a cup? I see I've come in a good time, Miss Susato. Thank you. Now, I have something I should like you all to see. I've designed myself a brand new great detective's hat. What the? There's a brim. At the front and at the back. And at both sides. 4 brims in total. Your observation is quite correct, my dear madame. I'm a busy man, you see. With this hat, whichever way I put it on, I shall always have it pointing the correct way. Oh. With my previous hat, I could, in an impetuous moment, wear it erroneously with the brims on either side. That's impressively clumsy, I would say. And I must regretfully say, I think your madcap theory was correct after all. But really, Mr. Sholmes, with brims on all 4 sides like that, wouldn't it just be better to wear a top hat instead? Oh yes, then however you put it on, you'd have a brim all around. What? So true, so true! How could I have been so blinkered to this fact until now? Well, fortunately, I happen to have 2 top hats here. If you just lift the pot off of it, you're welcome to try that one there. Indeed I shall, my good fellow. Much obliged. Oh dear, Hurley, it looks terrible. More terrible than I could have possibly have imagined. Oh, that's not good. Maybe it's because of your long face. Paired with a tall hat, it just doesn't work. Well, I think it's very nice, Mr. Sholmes, even if it will have the whole world in fits of laughter. Ah! I should never have meddled with it. Give me a deerstalker forevermore. And give me my Regulation University hat forevermore. There's still hope that you'll graduate one day, Mr. Naruhodo. Don't give up. And so another episode comes to an end. It's time for episode 6 then. In Mr. Natsume's room. In this escapade in Mr. Natsume's room, it's revealed that the Japanese scholar was once a teacher of English. He has much to say on the cultural differences between Japan and Britain, as well as on sentimentality, Shakespeare, and cycling. I quite like these. They're very educational. On the 23rd of February, 6:09 p.m., Mr. Natsume's room. So, Mr. Natsume, are you really returning home to Japan? Yes, indeed I am. Everything's arranged already. We'll be sad to see you go. And after Runa worked so hard to prove your innocence as well. What a shame. Feels like it was all a wasted effort. Don't say that! I know what you're suggesting. Now calm down, Mr. Natsume. It's all fine, really. You are in good company here, sir. If you fear the Reaper, you needn't hide the fact. I'm a proud citizen of the Empire of Japan. I'm not a scaredy cat. Talking of cats, Mr. Sholmes just casually threw one among the pigeons there. A man like me belongs in Japan, not here. That's what I've come to realize. I wonder. A mustache such as yours is eminently suited to London, I would say. There goes Mr. Sholmes throwing another cat in. The moment I arrived in the city, I noticed. Everyone in London laughs at me behind my back like hyenas. Hysterical hyenas, ha-haing horribly. I'm sure that's not true, Mr. Natsume. Oh, but it is. Whenever I turn around and peer down the fog-filled streets, all I see is foreigners everywhere. Well, there's you, Runo, and Susie in here, so that's 3 foreigners out of 5 people. I take your point. Only the other day, I was taking a stroll through the fog as usual when a young man approached me from ahead. He was pale and gaunt, his back arched like a cat. Observing his wretchedness moved me so deeply. I thought to myself, I'm not the only one suffering in this hell. But, do you know what? Can you imagine? It was just my own reflection in a shop window. A stunning, stinging, stupefying surprise! Don't forget slap in the face. Everyone started laughing at me. Gentlemen thereabouts, ladies passing by. Even the man in the shop window! Ah, yes, and a certain great detective would like to be included among the mirthful. Mr. Chums is really going for the Seki-san today. Well, I, for one, think you're a very handsome man, Mr. Natsume. There, did you hear that? This 10-year-old girl thinks you're handsome. Isn't that wonderful? That makes me feel suspiciously warm inside. He looks genuinely delighted. The point is, we Japanese are humble and modest. Studying on foreign soil, surrounded by foreign people, how could anyone possibly enjoy that? No one could. It's impossible. You're a genuine Japanese. If you say so. Actually, it would appear that there is someone. A Japanese man who studied in a foreign country and seems to have thrived on the experience. There is. Mr. Ogai Mori. I believe he studied in Germany. Mr. Mori, pray tell us more of the fellow. Well, today he's a very successful author in Japan. Oh, I've heard of him. He's the professor who wrote My Hime, isn't he? My Hime? I suppose in English the title would be Dancing Queen. Maybe? Oh, I see. A tale of a woman who waltzed her way through the world, perhaps. You really need to make up a silly translation, you know. It's already officially called The Dancing Girl in English. It seems Mr. Mori greatly enjoyed his time in Germany. He became close with a local lady while he was there. Close, you say? Local lady? A compatriot's criminally contradictory conduct! Well, I suppose your experience of studying abroad depends to a large extent on your character. As they say... Many men, many minds! Mr. Mori has an open mind. Mr. Natsume, a closed one. Possibly a slightly black and white view, do you think, Mr. Sholmes? Well, anyway. If that's how you feel about being abroad, why did you choose to study here? Wasn't it to further our nation's understanding of the English language or something? Yes, that's right. So what were you doing in Japan before you came to Great Britain then? I was a school teacher, of English, of course. A bit cursory perhaps, but I managed to discover some information about Mr. Natsume's teaching days. That's just a little outside the field of law, isn't it, Miss Susato? Well, let me pose you a question, Miss Naruhodo. If you had to translate the English phrase, I love you, into Japanese, what would it become? I'm wrong, because I think it's in Chinese, but I don't know. I just remember the Gintama song, one of the OPs being Wo I Ni. That's easy. Ashiteru, or Sukidesu, which I'm pretty sure is not Japanese, but it's on the anime OP, so I'm like, oh, okay. Wrong. According to Mr. Natsume's teachings, at least. What? Would you like to explain, Mr. Natsume? Yes, of course. Your research was very thorough. I wish you to tell my students that we Japanese don't express ourselves that way. Rather, we might say... Suki ga kireu desu ne. My dear Mr. Natsume, I must interject. Suki ga kirei desu ne would translate as, the moon is beautiful, isn't it? I know that! The point is that we Japanese are reticent when it comes to expressing our emotions. We prefer to show our feelings of adoration, our suki, by appreciating the beauty of the moon. The suki. Ah, using the suki to express suki. It's an amusing play on words, I see. No, or in language you might understand better. Bad chones. It's not a play on words, it's subtle, it's humble, it's fleeting and beautiful. It's art. Isn't it just being shy? Ah. My dear fellow, the foreign dancing girl will forever be out of your reach with such an attitude. Ugh. Imagine how the great Mr. Mori would act. He would win the lady's heart in a flash with a well-placed and unrestrained, I love you. Ah, that smooth Mr. Mori. Am I destined to live in his shadow forever? Just what sort of man is he in that imagination of yours? The fact is, I just can't settle in this foggy London town with all its foreign inhabitants. I've lost count of the number of different lodgings I tried before I found myself here. As it happens, I even lived on Baker Street at one time. No, really? A Sao scholar lives near there, a man by the name of William James Craig. His knowledge of Sao is unsurpassed. He's been a great inspiration to me over there. Forgive the interruption, but am I supposed to be familiar with the Sao of which you speak? Yeah, I have no clue how to say it. It's Shakespeare, of course. Shakespeare! But in Japanese, we write it as Sa and O. Sao. It's a phonetic representation using kanji characters, so England is Agilisu and America is America. Come to think of it, we use the same character as Ri in one word and Risu in another. Talk about confusing! So Shakespeare is Sao in Japanese. Presumably the Sa is a brutal attempt at the first Sha, in which case, where is the Kaspia? I never thought of that. We only have the O left. Which could, even in the most charitable interpretation, only be a brutal attempt at old man. It seems to me that whoever had the job of deciding on the characters for his name got bored very early on. Complete kanji, character, catastrophe! So then, on to the burning question. What about me? How do you write my name? Sorry. Hello, Sholmes, my dear fellow. There must be a Japanese character for my name. Oh dear, I am sorry, Mr. Sholmes, but none exists that I'm aware of. What? Am I really nothing to you Japanese? In that case, it is a matter of paramount importance. You must construct my name in kanji at once. Oh, well, we could use a kanji that's pronounced so to start with, and use one more to give... So, oh, perhaps? I think that would be about right, Mr. Sholmes. But that's almost the same as so, isn't it? Yes, you employed the dreaded O. I don't want people to confuse me with an old man who died centuries ago. I'm sure the world's greatest literary figure would rather not be confused with you either. Well, the world's greatest detective is still youthful and full of vigor, so how about so handsome? Oh yes, that sounds wonderful. I'm sure everyone will be calling you that 100 years from now. How could she say that with a straight face? What about me then? Iris. Perhaps Ahimi, since the second character doesn't seem to matter? Ahimi. Oh yes, Princess of Love. That's an adorable name for you, Iris. Wait, so what are any years, Japanese? Stop, please! With a name like that, Mr. Molly is likely to turn up at any moment and rashly declare, I love you! I was right. I just confused myself into thinking I was wrong. This Mori-san has become quite a character in Soseki-san's mind. And you, Mr. Naruhodo. Might I venture Kurobozu as a fitting name for you, as in the Dark Monk? Oh, that's very good. It describes you perfectly, Bruno. So you think I'll be wearing this black varsity uniform for the rest of my days, do you? Mr. Naruhodo already has a Japanese name. I don't believe he needs another. Well, anyway. We were talking about your life here in London, weren't we, Mr. Natsume? You should just get out and have fun. The landlady has said as much to me too. Mrs. Garadeb. But it wasn't fun at all. It was frightful. Whatever do you mean? A cycle incident. An incident on a bicycle. Oh yes, come to think of it. There's an old bicycle parked just outside, isn't there? It's in a sorry state, though. I tried to say no to her, but she insisted I took it for a ride. Perhaps my pronunciation was wrong. So I took my life in my hands and attempted to ride the steel spiderweb stallion to a nearby park. I really don't think there's anything wrong with your pronunciation, Mr. Natsume. Young Garadeb just isn't the kind of woman to take no for an answer. If you're going to die, you might as well die in beautiful surroundings, so the park was my first thought. After a whole day of dicing with death, I emerged with only relatively minor bruises. So you got the knack of it. Don't be silly. Dying isn't something you can learn to do. Mr. Natsume, you keep talking about dicing with death and dying and so forth, but riding a bicycle is supposed to be fun. Oh no, that's just what people tell you. But it's an old wives' tale. Is it? I mean, just consider the real name of the vehicle. It's not called a dicycle for nothing. How anyone expects to use such an aptly named vehicle to move forwards is beyond me. Pedal, power, promises pain. I didn't think it was possible to get worse with practice. I'm lucky to be alive. Although, I must say, after looking death in the eye for a whole week, I did at least manage to mount the steed reliably. And notwithstanding a few wobbles, I found I could make progress in the forward direction. Ah, what a triumph. Deduction is much the same. When first presented with a problem, the mental exertion of trying to solve it leads only to bitter disappointment. But after a week of picking one's way carefully along the path of reasoning and thought, one begins to see results. So, is that why all of your off-the-cuff deductions always seem half-baked? What a wonderful insight into your extraordinary mind, Mr. Sholmes. Unfortunately, after wobbling down the street, I noticed there were little stones everywhere. Death traps. Not that way, I said to myself. But the wild vehicle wouldn't listen. It wobbled me on and on down the street. So of course, I hit one of those deadly stones and the crazy colt threw me. It's just my luck. Bicycles are the epitome of my pitiful life. I wish I could disagree. On the same subject, I'm sure there's a famous American author who's written about having a similar experience. Oh yes, I've read that essay too, Iris. Some of us are better read than others. Well, no more bicycles for me. Oh, Mr. Natsume, at least you have an interesting anecdote to take with you back to Japan, if nothing else. You always manage to put a positive spin on things, don't you, Miss Susato? Personally, I haven't mounted a bicycle for some time. No, me neither. That's good. So how about a jaunt? We shall all ride out together. Huh? That sounds great. I'll perch behind Miss Suzuto. But the sun is going down. It'll be pitch black before long. London's street lamps are very bright, you know, and the fog isn't too thick today. And my beloved ride is all bent out of shape. My dear fellow, if you are bound to topple the vehicle anyway, it's fitting that it's already bent out of shape. It's settled then. Come along, Mr. Natsume. Shall we go? Suki ga kiri desu ne. Don't tell me that's his translation of no thank you as well. Indeed, Master Natsume, the moon is at its most beautiful at precisely this time in the evening. Oh. We're not Japanese. You can't beat around the bush with us. What a weird and wonderful world! And so another episode comes to an end, leaving us but 2 more to partake in. So next time on Great Ace Attorney Adventures, we finish the Let's Play out, and then get ready to move on to the sequel by taking on Episode 7 and Episode 8 of our Escapades. Join me then, and I'll see you guys around for more. Bye-bye.